Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so I did this wonderful little PowerPoint. And I was looking for images related to climate change, and this one popped up, and I think you can see what it is. It's drought conditions, and since you were just talking about places that don't have water, besides those places that may be surrounded by water that maybe they can't, water everywhere and not a drop to drink because it's ocean water, there are also those places where there just is no water. Or the water has been used in such a way that it's caused in one location that it's causing drought in the other. So the heading was Human Health, Ethics, and Environmental Justice. And so I just wanted to just give you a little bit of background in terms of definitions, so we're kind of on the same page when we talk about things. All right. Whoops. Yeah. Let me just do the slideshow and then slideshow. Let's do it this way. Come on. This is weird. Why did it do that? You can still see, oh, you can see it up there, and it's showing me what's here. All right, so I teach the ethics course here as part of the English department. Some of our offerings include philosophy. So one of the chapters that we're discussing now, particularly because I knew this topic was coming up, was the idea of environmental ethics. To understand environmental ethics, you have to understand what ethics are to begin with. So I have here a general definition of it, but the point of the definition that I want you to understand is that ethics really only applies when you're talking about relationships between individuals. All right, so you don't really, other than for your own conscience, you don't really have to think, well, what am I going to do if it's not in relation to, is this going to help or harm someone else, if no one else is involved. All right. So it has to do with moral choices to be made by the individual in, I'm sorry it says his, but it's the American Heritage Dictionary, so it's not going to be gender neutral, in his relationship with others. And that takes me to Aldo Leopold and his land ethic. And just to give you a touch of background about why an English professor would be interested in this, I actually have an associate in applied science in forest technology as well. So the environment has always been a major interest of mine. What happens out there, nature, science, all of that has always been an interest of mine. And one of the things that Aldo Leopold did, you can see this was written around 1933, so quite a while ago, although environmentalism as a movement didn't really gain a lot of steam until much later. He decided, although the typical definition of ethics involves typically relationships between people, how you behave with other people, how people behave together, which allows society to function. He wanted to take it a step further and recognize the fact that human beings are a part of a larger community. It's a natural community. We are a part of nature. All right? And we interact with nature. And nature interacts with us, as you saw from the video of what happened in the Virgin Islands. So he says, all ethics so far evolved rest upon a single premise that the individual is a member of a community of interdependent parts. He wants those interdependent parts to include nature. Right? So when we think about what's the right thing or the wrong thing to do, or what is the just thing to do, we should be thinking about it in relation not just to ourselves, but also to the environment. And I don't know if any of you have taken any courses that involve discussions of ecosystems or environmental communities. Has anybody? Okay. But if you look at those, it's all interrelated. It's all, the air you breathe is a part of who you are, right? It's what allows you to continue to function. The water that you drink is necessary for your life to continue. The food that you eat, all of that maintains just your basic biological life, is connected to that environmental community as well. On top of that, the actions we take impacts the quality of that environment. Okay? Oh, stop. We've also talked in our ethics class about the theory of justice as it applies in ethics. And you can see that the main idea, and I just kind of summed this up for you. The main idea, it's much more big and complicated, and you should take my course if you're interested. But the main idea is that the principles of justice are those principles that people who are free and rational and concerned to benefit themselves would agree to, given an initial position of equality. In other words, whatever those ideas are, we're coming from a place of assuming all are equal. All right, so what do you know about our society? Yeah.
Lots of inequality.
Yeah. Yeah. Speak up. Okay, yes, there are a lot of inequalities. All right, so it takes that into consideration as well. You know, a lot of people hear the theory of justice and they assume social justice, and they assume social justice means we're going to take all the money in the world and give everybody the same amount. And that is not really what's at the heart of it. Okay, it's not just the equal distribution of wealth. It has to do with actions that take into consideration those least powerful or least advantaged members of society, not just the ones who are in power or in a privileged position within society. So, the point is no one is advantaged or disadvantaged simply by chance of social or natural circumstances. We are advantaged or disadvantaged because of our social or natural circumstances, but we shouldn't let those influence our decisions on our actions. We should assume that everybody should have kind of that equal opportunity, all right, equal consideration, not just the ones who have it good or the ones who are going to most benefit from the decision. So, basic rights and duties should be assigned equally. Furthermore, and this to me gets at what we're talking about with environmental justice, social and economic inequalities, because they do exist, are just only if they result in benefits for everyone. And in particular, that they take into consideration the least advantaged. So you're not simply cutting them out of the equation. It means you have to make a conscious effort to think about the people who are least advantaged in society. Okay? You with me so far? Here's my little... Okay. So I've got a couple questions for you, because in order to talk about this, we kind of have to ask ourselves what's natural. And then we have to ask ourselves what fits into the picture. And I picked these, it took a little looking, but I picked these two images kind of on purpose. I see them as sort of echoing each other. You have the mountains on the top one, which looks very natural, right? And the little cloud streaming off from the top of the mountains. And then we have the cloud streaming off the smokestack. If you missed that, I just wanted to point it out to you. And I had to get the smoke going the same way so that you get that. Wow. So it took a little searching, but we did get it. So what is natural? Let me ask you that. What do you think is natural? What makes something natural?
Something that's not man-made.
Not man-made. Okay. Anybody else?
Not influenced by man.
Not influenced by man. Okay, anybody else? Yes.
Something that is not affected by outside causes.
Outside causes?
Like it's just there, nothing touches it, changes it.
You mean like
influences it.
pure, pristine wilderness sort of stuff? Is that what you mean by natural? Okay. So let me ask you this. Are humans natural? Just ask him.
There's something I was gonna bring up at the end of the discussion, but as a species, yes, but just the fact that we walk outside of our door in the morning and we're not eaten by a grizzly bear in and of itself is an affront to nature as we know it.
Why?
Because we adapted ourselves to have this society and everything, and society in and of itself is man-made. Whereas, as nature would intend it, bears would be our predators, and if we were to throw ourselves out into the woods right now with, no chance of getting out, we'd have to fend for ourselves, how many of us would actually survive?
Bound and determined. Yeah, so let me ask you this. Are there any animals that are capable of the same thing? That are capable of manipulating their environment to make it safer for themselves? That can engineer their shelters? That can influence their water supplies?
Any predator on the hierarchy of the chain dictates, what goes on underneath.
No, I'm just
Beavers?
asking if there are any, what'd you say?
Beavers?
Yeah, beavers. We're real good at this. Yeah, in fact, our engineers learn from their engineers, right? Yeah, when you think about it. So the problem in some ways becomes how do we see ourselves? Do we see ourselves as a member of a natural community, a community within nature? Or do we see ourselves as somehow absolutely apart from nature? And that's a question I want to put to you. Where do we fit into the picture? Yes, we're an apex predator, right? That's the right term, right? Thank you. I didn't lose all that from years and years ago. Yes, we're an apex predator. So is a lion. So is a wolf. But what is our relationship to nature? How do we fit in? Are we a part of it, or are we totally distinct from nature? Or, because I hate either or thinking, are we some combination thereof?
Oh, we're cyborgs, right? I couldn't see you
There
if
we go.
I couldn't see you if I took my glasses off, so naturally, I'm as blind as a bat. But when I put the technology on and become something less or more or different than a natural human being, I see it perfectly.
And I'm even more of a cyborg because I have lens implants. But does that make me not natural, is the question. That one alteration, does that make me less natural? Think about it, okay? I think the hard thing for us with that question is we impact our environment, and I think we see ourselves as impacting the environment much more than we see natural critters impacting the environment. Right? And because we impact the environment, we're in the position now where we're worried about climate change. Well, some of us are worried about climate change. There are people who are not worried about climate change. So my first question is, how many of you believe that there is something called climate change? Okay, that's good. But there are people who don't. And why wouldn't they believe it?
Not educated?
What?
Not educated, maybe?
Okay, they don't know about it. Anything else?
They don't see it affecting them personally.
All right, so that's something that's far away and that's not immediately impacting me, so it doesn't matter. Any other reasons why people don't believe in it? Yes?
The record shows that the planet has been warmer in the past, so is it a major concern?
Okay, so they have maybe some knowledge about past occurrences where the Earth has warmed or cooled, and so maybe this is just a part of that natural pattern, right? Any other reasons they don't believe in climate change?
Maybe their beliefs. Their beliefs.
Like,
Their political views, or if a religion says this is their animal.
okay, so there might be other factors, including politics, religion, I would say even the media, how the media selects what it shows us or talks about what it shows us. I'm going to just give you the example of my brother very quickly, who is an engineer, and I've never understood this. He had an undergraduate degree in geology, and he says, global warming, oh sure. First of all, I'm like, don't say global warming, say climate change. But global warming, how could that be? We just had the coldest winter and we had massive blizzards, and how can this be? You know, it's all a bunch of bunk. How do you counter that? How do you answer that? What is it he's not getting? And I find it ironic that as an English professor, I'm explaining to the geologist, engineer, what the issue is there, right? Go ahead.
That it's not just global warming, it's climate change as a whole, and whether that's
Yeah, so what's the difference between climate and a snowstorm? Yeah,
Weather is like a daily forecast climate patterns
okay, over
over periods of
long
time.
periods of time, right? So just because we had one blizzard this winter does not mean, therefore, that, you know, we're going to suffer an ice age suddenly. And it doesn't discount the fact of global warming, right? So for those who don't believe, the question is, what is it they don't know? What does the science actually tell us is happening? Since you all believe that this is happening, I didn't have anybody that didn't raise their hand in here, I'm going to move on. And talk about, because it does happen, what are some of the impacts of this? All right? So, I was just reading an article from Scientific America talking about how low-income neighborhoods in particular, minority and low-income neighborhoods in particular, suffer higher rates of respiratory problems than affluent or white middle-class neighborhoods. Any idea why that might be? Yeah.
If you look at proximity to major freeways.
Okay, so we've got freeway issues. Yeah, who wants to build their house right? If you've got a lot of money, who wants to build a house right next to like a 6-lane highway with lots of truck traffic on it? Or, oh, you do? Okay.
Easy access.
Yeah, I hope you have good health insurance. All right. It also is typically places where power plants and industry occurs because of the political disenfranchisement of those populations. They don't have as loud a political voice to stop something like that by saying, not in my backyard. Anybody been in a situation where you've had a not in my backyard issue come up? Yeah.
I live in Washingtonville.
Yes.
And they wanted to put Verizon cell towers somewhere nearby because the service is awful in Washingtonville.
Okay.
And people said, not in my backyard, and now there's no cell service in Washingtonville.
Okay. So why didn't they want them there?
Doesn't look nice, I guess.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know if there were any environmental issues connected with that as well. But yeah, so the little rural county, actually it's a big rural county, just has a small population in it that I grew up in. I had this situation when New York State was looking to locate a low-level nuclear waste dump site. And that was such a huge movement that they ended up not putting it in our county. We didn't create that nuclear waste. We didn't get our power from nuclear power plants. Why would we have to deal with the waste, was the question. And we had enough intelligent and well-educated and affluent people to fight that off. And a lot of really strong farmer types as well. Anyway, there are a number of situations that were listed on that previous slide of the impacts that we have on the environment. that impact human communities. And we also have a number of impacts also on environmental communities. So taking Leopold's idea of the land ethic, what are we doing that's also impacting the communities within nature, other than the human community? And you can see a number, I'm sure you've probably heard of most of these as some sort of an environmental issue. Polar ice caps are melting, the polar bears have nowhere to go. The sage grouse in the Midwest, Southwest, that part of the country, are in danger because of lots of drilling rigs and development, which is removing the sagebrush habitat they need and cannot survive without. The bald eagle, if you think about the history of the bald eagle and how there didn't used to be any here. And now, you can go very close by. You can go over to Bashkill, you can see eagles. You can go up to Mount Peters outside of Warwick, the Hawkwatch platform there and see eagles. They're all around us now. You can go to the Hudson River and see eagles, right? They were dying out at one point. We recognized what we were doing within the environment that was impacting that. We got rid of that. So we can both negatively and positively fix things. And now we're looking at the issue with honeybees. Why the heck are they important?
All nice plants.
Oh yeah, they're our major pollinators, right? For all sorts of agricultural things. And why are they dying out?
Pesticides.
Yeah, it's our fault. Yeah, okay. And many of the ways in which we contribute to those communities suffering at our hands. So, given all of that, and this is kind of where I sort of want us to you can jump in, talk about what are our ethical obligations as human beings to this natural environment. What is our burden for having caused or contributed to, I should say, climate change? What principles should we be operating by in order to help with climate change? What is just? And what are people doing about it? It's nice to hear all the bad things. No, it's not nice to hear all the bad things. There are people actually doing something. Somebody mentioned having seen the Al Gore movie. Okay, thank you. The Al Gore movie, in Inconvenient Truth, got it right this time, that impacted you and made you want to know more about this. Right? So that's somebody who can kind of produce information out to people related to this, but we also need to look at what other people are doing. So, does anybody want to address any of those questions?